The duo of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George was supposed to shake up the entire NBA landscape when the trade was announced. But as we all know, that hasn't even come close to happening. And there's a few reasons why the Clippers have not won a championship yet. Let's get into them. In 2019, the Clippers announced that they had just acquired Paul George from the Oklahoma City Thunder for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, and multiple future picks. This was announced shortly after Kawhi Leonard signed with the team. Kawhi had just come off of winning an NBA championship for the Toronto Raptors, and Paul George had just come off a season where he averaged 28 points per game, along with other impressive stats, and finished third in the MVP voting. Two of the best two-way players were now teaming up. Big things were expected, to say the least. The Clippers' president of basketball operations was hyped and confident that George was the final piece needed to bring home his first ring. Paul George is one of the greatest two-way players in our game. He's an elite scorer and a relentless defender whose versatility elevates any team. When you have the opportunity to acquire a contributor of his caliber, you do what it takes to bring him home. Paul is a native of the Los Angeles area and an ideal fit for the Clippers, thanks to his selflessness and drive. Following the lead of Steve Ballmer, we have plotted an aggressive course to build a championship contender, and acquiring Paul is a critical step. The Clippers also had a nice supporting cast. Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, and Ivica Zubac were excellent complementary pieces that filled every hole in the roster. They started the season hot, winning 14 of their first 20 games. George had undergone offseason surgery to repair a small tear in his shoulder, so he was sidelined at the beginning of the season. However, after returning on November 14, 2019, he dropped 33 points in his first game back versus the New Orleans Pelicans. However, they would lose this game, but Kawhi didn't play, and everyone was still excited after seeing George seemingly not missing a step after his shoulder surgery. The Clippers ended up finishing the season 49-23, finishing second in the Western Conference. PG-13 averaged 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game in his debut year as a Clipper. His partner in crime, Kawhi, put up 27 points while being perfect in every category. Although the two only played 105 games combined, they were looking ready for the playoffs. Not to mention, Lou Williams was balling out, putting up nearly 20 points per game. Then, of course, like the rest of the world, the coronavirus pandemic cut the season short. The first round of the playoffs was played on August 17th, and the Clippers faced off against a young Luka and the Dallas Mavericks in what was now called the NBA bubble. LA would win Game 1 118-110, with Kawhi and George scoring 29 and 27 points respectively. Dallas would take the next game largely due to George shooting 4 for 17 from the field, dropping only 14 points. Then in Game 3, Kawhi would carry his team to an 8-point victory after scoring 35 points. Paul George, on the other hand, would stink it up again, going 3 for 16 from the field. Game 4, the Mavericks would squeeze in a win, even after Kawhi went off for 32 points and 9 boards, with George going 3 for 14. This is exactly why he received the nickname Pandemic P. Nevertheless, though, the Clippers would win the series in Game 6 due to Kawhi and some role players making big shots and getting big stops at crucial times. Paul George played exceptionally bad, but now he had a chance to redeem himself versus the Denver Nuggets in Round 2. In Game 1 versus Denver, many assumed the series was done after they blew him out 120-97, with Kawhi and George having pretty good performances on both ends of the floor. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray didn't do much of anything either, only combining for 26 points and 9 assists. In Game 2, things were a lot different. Jamal and the Joker combined for 53 points and came away with a win. In Game 3, George had his best game in the bubble, scoring 32 points and going 5 for 7 from 3. They would win the next 2 games, now up 3-2 on the Nuggets. They were only 1 game away from the Western Conference Finals. In the potential closeout game, George and Kawhi played great. George scored 33 points and snatched 5 steals, while Kawhi dropped 25 points. Unfortunately, though, it wasn't enough against the Joker and Murray, and now they were heading into Game 7. And really, all you need to know about this game is that Montrezl Harrell was the Clippers' leading scorer. Just by knowing that alone, I'm sure you can guess who won the game. Kawhi and George decided to go out there and play a Game 7 blindfolded, with one hand tied behind their backs. They combined for a paltry 23 points, and both shot 28% from the field and three-point line. This loss was heartbreaking. But they were cut some slack though, because it was still their first year together. In year 2, they had another great regular season. George averaged 23 points per game while upping his efficiency, and Kawhi continued to be a two-way machine. They also added a few players like DeMarcus Cousins, Luke Kennard, and Nicholas Batum, increasing their depth further. They finished the year 47-25 and faced off against the Dallas Mavericks yet again in the first round, and then the Utah Jazz in the second. After winning both of these series, the Clippers were now in the Western Conference Finals, facing off against Phoenix, as expected with that loaded roster. But here's the thing. During Game 4 versus the Jazz, Kawhi injured his knee in the fourth quarter on a drive to the basket. He would not only miss the rest of the game, but he also missed the rest of the Western Conference Finals. And as expected, the Clippers, without Kawhi, were defeated in Game 6, getting blown out by 28 points. Now we get to last season. Kawhi and George each played below 58 games due to multiple injuries. And at this point, many NBA fans weren't all that high on the Clippers anymore. Everyone knew the story by now. Either one of them could get injured at any crucial moment, and they underperformed when the light shined the brightest. They were still a good team, finishing the year 44-38. At the trade deadline, they would pick up both Russell Westbrook and Bones Highland. And so heading into the playoffs, the Clippers started to gain traction again. In round 1, they faced off against the Phoenix Suns, who now had Kevin Durant along with Booker and CP3. And of course, you know how that story goes. Paul George had trouble with his knee, which led him to missing the entire series. It was now up to Kawhi, Russ, and Norman Powell to pull off the upset, and it looked like they might be able to do it, because in Game 1, they would defeat the Suns 115-110, with Kawhi scoring 38 points, Russ grabbing 11 rebounds, and dishing out 8 assists. But then they would get blown out in Game 2, although Russ and Kawhi did play well. Kawhi was battling with a knee injury as well that happened in Game 1, and thus he would miss both Games 3 and 4, which were both Clipper losses. They ended up getting gentlemen swept, with their 2 stars falling victim to injury yet again. 3 seasons, 0 championships. That now brings us to the present day in the 2023 offseason, and I don't think there's anyone with high hopes for this team anymore. The duo has been together for long enough and they have nothing to show for it. And I hate to say it, but there's just no way these two can stay healthy long enough to win anything meaningful. Then there's the significant possibility that one of these two will be traded by this upcoming season's trade deadline. Not to mention, the Western Conference is absolutely stacked now. The defending champs, led by Nikola Jokic, aren't going anywhere anytime soon. The Lakers are still a threat. The Phoenix Suns have gotten better after adding Bradley Beal, among others. And then the Grizzlies now have 2 of the most recent Defensive Player of the Year winners on the same team. Then of course you got the Mavericks and the Kings, who are as talented as any team in the NBA. And of course, you can't forget the Golden State Warriors, who are still a threat every single season. On paper, a fully healthy Clippers roster is one of the best teams in the NBA. Kawhi has already shown that he's still dominant on both ends of the floor when he's healthy. Paul George is still a top 5 two-way player when he's healthy. And Russell Westbrook has proven he still has a lot left in the tank after the Sun series. Then you still have Norman Powell, Terrence Mann, Ivica Zubac, Nicholas Batum, and Bones Highland. That depth and a great coach in Ty Lue are insane when led by a healthy Kawhi and George. Unfortunately, it feels like we already know how this is going to play out. But who knows? Hopefully, I'm wrong. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.